There's a 2000 LP challenger who's ranked 2 on the EUS server who achieved this with a 70% win rate. His name is Phantasm. He's an Akshan main who's been terrorizing the ranked ladder. In today's guide, you're going to be walked through step by step everything he's doing to absolutely stomp solo queue, starting from the first minute of the game all the way to how he gets the Nexus to explode. And speaking of winning ranked games, if you want to learn how to carry bad teammates and finally rank up, then take our brand new Season 14 courses that teach you the secrets to carrying as a top laner, jungler, mid laner, AD carry, and support. Pair that with our other new courses on how to counter OP top laners, OP mid laners, master your jungle clears, or check out our new Bronze to Diamond series. Then head on over to our Smurf commentary, select your champion to watch live commentaries from challenger experts teaching you how to carry out of the exact rank you're stuck in. You can even ask them any questions you have and are guaranteed to get answers. The best part is you can try all of this out completely risk-free, since if you don't rank up while actively using skill capped, you'll get your money back, no questions asked. You can unlock all of this right now through the discount you can only get from the link below. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below to get the rank you've always wanted. Okay, so the first thing he does nearly every game is place a ward on the enemy's Raptors at around 1 minute and 27 seconds. This is extremely valuable as it not only catches the enemy jungler's exact route. In this game, we not only know Jarvan did red Krugs into Raptors, but the ward will also stay alive long enough to protect him from any ganks after this point, which is fairly common since junglers will be level 3 with a red buff. He'll do this regardless of which side he's on. He places the Raptor Ward, and we spot the enemy jungler Viego, knowing his exact path and that he's transitioning to his top side. When it truly pays off though is in games like these. Places the early Raptor Ward, spots the enemy jungler at the Raptors as usual, but this time we see the enemy jungler is going for a gank. And now Nidalee is revealed on the map with a ton of time wasted setting her behind. And it's not just jungle ganks, here the enemy Karthus bot looks to do an early gank, gets spotted by the Raptor Ward, Akshan spots his teammates nearby to help and are collapsing, and suddenly a free trinket ward nets him an early 2 kills. Now in terms of laning, his typical levels 1 to 3 game plan involves getting the push advantage and lane priority early on. He primarily achieves this by spamming auto attacks on the wave. Akshan being an attack damage champion along with his passive means he can outpush most champions just by spamming autos on the wave. While doing this, he tries to find opportunities for a double value spell where he hits the wave and the enemy at the same time with his Q. To emphasize just how much he values pushing early, if you look at this position, he could use this wave that he crashed as a rebound. Where the wave will push back to him, this is usually done when you're waiting to trade or set up a kill on someone since they'll then have to overextend to last hit on future waves. Instead, he's going to use this as an opportunity to get ahead of pushing the next wave by queuing it while the enemy is still distracted having to last hit under tower. With this early lane priority, he looks to help his jungler fight over scuttles. This makes a lot of sense given that Akshan is typically way stronger than the mages early on that need more time to scale. Right after, he's back to pushing, setting up lane priority to react topside, and that's an early kill for him, into picking up 2 more takedowns. And yeah, the game's barely started and he's already massively ahead. Now, getting to fights first with his push advantage is only one piece of the puzzle. The second thing he's going to use his push advantage for is baiting the enemy jungler to waste their time. Most players would just sit under tower scared, but he knows to land as much chip damage on Udyr as he can. This then sets up his jungler to take a second scuttle without Udyr being able to fight back. The way he sets up these L plays on the jungler is by warding one side of the map. He then hugs that side of the lane so he has maximum time to escape if he gets ganked from the other side. You can see how this forces the enemy Udyr to actually try a lane gank, and again, at this point the game couldn't be any easier for his jungler. Now, what about when he lacks the push advantage? Well, he'll look to get a health advantage through trading to compensate for the lack of lane priority. The main way he achieves this is by abusing cooldown timings. You can see Varus uses his E and Q, so now he's instantly aggressive looking for that trade while the abilities are on cooldown. Again, here lacks the push advantage, but the enemy misses Syndra E, that's on cooldown for around 15 seconds. So he looks to trade off that cooldown timing, and you can see how Syndra only being able to land 1 E instead of 2 over the course of the all-in makes all the difference. Well, that and a sick flash at the end. In general though, if he has the push advantage, he's not really looking to trade too aggressively or force a solo kill. Instead, I've noticed that his solo kills usually come from when he lacks lane priority. One trick he'll use to get these solo kills with Akshan is looking to trade to get an enemy low on health, but then create distance before either of them die. This lets him then finish them off with Akshan ult after. Now, I didn't just go through games he won, I also analyzed his losses. And what was interesting is that I found when he lost is usually because the enemy mid got to do everything that we just went over. So instead of him having lane priority and baiting the enemy jungler to execute a failed gank, it was actually the enemy mid with the push advantage baiting his jungler, and instead of the enemy jungler wasting their time ganking him, it was successful. This would then snowball, where his team was the one losing the river fights instead of winning them, which I think really emphasizes how much these concepts influenced his solo queue success. So, the early laning phase is mainly about getting that lane priority to help fight over scuttles. After this point, he's going to transition into a heavy push into roam strategy. His bread and butter roam is pretty standard, pushing the wave first as fast as he can by making sure his Q hits the whole wave. The faster he clears, the larger the timing window he has to roam. He'll then use a combination of his E and W to make his roams hit extremely fast, which then lets him get back to lane missing minimal CS. He'll also pay special attention to which side his own jungler is on and seems to prioritize roaming towards that side. This is smart to do since it not only prevents a scenario where his roam is counter ganked by an enemy jungler, but it also means that gank is going to hit that much harder since his jungler can be there too. Now, when he sets up these roams, he doesn't always just commit. He'll do what's called a half roam. This is when he'll have a roam timing after pushing the wave, he'll move to a lane that he thinks is gankable, watch the lane, and then by the time he gets around the halfway point in the river, if it doesn't look like a good gank, he's just going to go back to push the next wave. He'll continue to do this over and over again, where he pushes, starts moving to a side lane that he thinks has good roam potential. Then, while watching the lane, if it's no longer a good gank, he turns around at the halfway point of the river to get back to the next wave, and repeat this until he finally sees a good roam at the halfway point in the river, in which case he then commits instead of turning around. Now, those were more fundamentals. Let's get into some more advanced roaming tactics that he uses. One thing I noticed is that he'll look for plays like these, where the enemy overextends to make a play on a side lane. You can see he doesn't push out mid first as the wave is still there. But if his AD carry is dead or low in health, then by ganking, he not only gets to clean up the fight, but also gets to farm the wave after. This way, although he's sacrificing farm mid, he gets to make up for that by just farming bot. And then his AD carry goes mid to pick up the farm there. Same concept here, but applied to top lane. Aurelia gets a kill topside, but gets low from tower diving. Instead of going mid, where he has the wave, he just goes straight top. This is really smart, as now he not only gets that potential kill on Aurelia, but he doesn't miss farm since he can just farm the empty lane topside. Then, once Pantheon respawns, he can always head mid to pick up the farm there. But in this game, it's his bot lane doing a lane swap picking it up instead. This type of advanced roam is actually great to use when you have losing teammates. His Ezreal dies 2v2 and is down around 40 CS on the enemy ADC. Yet, he's able to use this to his advantage by cleaning up a kill after into pushing 2 waves, grabbing a turret plate, and now his Ezreal gets to safely farm a wave mid. Here is a great sequence illustrating just how powerful this advanced tactic can be. He executes a roam on bot since the enemy is tower diving. In doing this, he's sacrificing a wave mid along with his tower. But in doing the roam, he gets 3 kills, that's 900 gold. He's now in an empty lane and he gets to push. So he gets 2 minion waves, that's around 300 gold, a third wave, that's another 150, a fourth wave for another 150 gold, another kill, that's 300 gold, into a tower, that's 300 gold, into a fifth wave, that's 150 gold. In this entire sequence, he generated approximately 2,250 gold. Now let's look at what the enemy Varus mid got during this time. One wave, that's 150 gold, mid tower, that's 300, then has to recall since he can't continue pushing, a second wave top, that's 150, a third wave, 150 gold, a fourth wave, 150 gold, and this is when Akshan has recalled. So, in the same amount of time, Varus got 900 gold compared to Akshan's 2,250. Basically, if you're able to get a roam where you clean up a fight and have an empty lane after, the majority of the time you're going to be ahead of the enemy mid laner even if they get mid tower. Another advanced roaming tactic he'll use is the fake roam, where he'll basically use a half roam to then execute a gank on his own lane. You can see how effective this is if you look at the enemy's point of view. It looks like he's doing his usual push into roam strategy, and the only way to try and punish that is through pushing the lane to get plates and deny minions. But that means you're now overextended enough to be ganked by your own laner. By the way, if you want to learn more about how to roam as a mid laner, we literally created an entire course on it on our website that I highly recommend. Okay, so you're now probably wondering if all he does is roam. Although he does have a roam heavy playstyle, there are a few specific conditions where he'll stay in lane instead. The first is when he has a big health lead on the enemy mid. Instead of roaming off the push, he'll typically look to stay in lane and pressure the tower for plates. This often baits a jungle gank from the enemy, which creates a nice advantage for his team as it reveals the jungler while wasting their time. The second is when the enemy is too far ahead in distance for him to follow the roam. For example, in this game, he pushes to then help with Dragon. This lets the enemy mid make a cross-map play roaming topside. Since the enemy is way ahead of him, there's no point in trying to follow them topside, so he just pushes mid. And that's tower, into another minion wave, into a second inner mid turret. In general, if he's already in lane when the enemy mid shows in a side lane, then he'll typically default into pushing to deny minions, get plates, and possibly towers. It's not until the enemy mid shows back in lane does he then transition back into a push into roam. And this makes perfect sense since by pushing the wave, you're pinning the enemy mid down and guaranteeing a number advantage on your roam. And this concept will follow him into the mid game. If he finds himself in an empty side lane, possibly because of a solo kill, he will prioritize pushing that lane during the enemy's death timer instead of trying to roam or group. Again, makes sense since by pushing you're forcing an enemy to defend. If they don't send someone to defend, that's a ton of free gold and XP for you. And if they do send someone to defend, well, like you just saw in the laning example, you can always just roam to look for a fight as you're guaranteed to be up numbers. One thing he's exceptionally good at in the mid game though is recalling off his item spikes. For example, while he's in the side lane here, he's aware of how much gold he needs to finish his shield bow. And so instead of trying to really do anything else, he just prioritizes getting the exact amount of gold to complete that item, then recalls, buys it, and then looks for other macro tactics we'll cover shortly. Here's a really great example of this. He gets into a side lane, only farms like 1.5 waves, then immediately recalls. Why? Because that's exactly how much gold he needed to complete his Lord Dominic's. And he then uses this big spike in power immediately by teleporting into a fight. And that lets him have a massive impact on the outcome, which then sets up his team to take Baron after. Overall though, the most common macro tactic he seems to focus on in the mid game is creating number advantaged fights. The most common way he does this is by pushing out a side lane first. This then forces an enemy to have to come pick up the wave. With one enemy guaranteed off the map, he then looks for plays on the opposite side where he'll often have the number advantage. This is a good example showing how he adapts in real time. He starts by shoving topside and then rotates mid, where he also shoves that lane out. He starts rotating towards bot side, anticipating defenders to come to those waves top and mid, but no fight breaks out or enemies to collapse on. So he catches the next wave mid to push that out while we see an enemy showing topside. Now, a fight breaks out bot, so he begins moving, but we can see it's a losing fight down numbers. Well, that means there can't be any defenders mid, so that's a mid inner turret into the next wave. Another interesting tactic he uses to get number advantage fights is purposely sacrificing an outer tower. He does this most often when there's an objective on the other side of the map. This way, even if he doesn't get the fight he wants, his team will at least get the objective for giving up that outer tower. He always makes sure to get back in time for the inner turret though, as that's worth 700 gold compared to the 300 of outer turrets. I also saw another interesting tactic he used to get an advantage for teamfights, where if his team has Baron and he has teleport up, he'll group with them, look to play out the teamfight slowly, trying to do damage and bait out enemy ultimates. If he doesn't win the fight, then he just uses Baron's enhanced recall to quickly teleport back in to then start a second fight with his team's health and ultimate advantage. One of the main macro tactics he uses to end games where he has a lead is to force Baron early and often. This is something that likely comes across to you as insane, but it's actually the main reason low elo games last so much longer on average. Players simply don't realize how Baron is the key to ending games. For example, in this game, his team's ahead around 8k gold. Right before Baron spawns, he shoves out top, then immediately goes to group with his team to start forcing Baron. The whole idea is that it forces the enemy team, who's down a ton of gold, to fight outside of their towers unless they give up the Baron for free. And naturally, when you're ahead this far, it's easy to win those team fights, which means right after, you can then take the Baron anyways. Here, his team is only slightly ahead, but the same principle applies. He pushes out a side lane in anticipation of the Baron spawn. Groups with his team, this time the enemy team doesn't contest, so that's a free Baron at 20 minutes. He'll often just repeat this over and over. For example, starts shoving out top, rotates to force Baron, enemy contests, so that means we team fight. That's 3 kills for his team, leaves base and shoves out bot while his team is off the map, recalls and now heads to pressure Baron with the bot wave pushing that lures the defender. And this time the enemy doesn't contest, so that's a free Baron at 24 minutes. And this will then apply for the rest of the game. As soon as Baron is going to spawn again, pushes a lane to set up the rotate, then groups with the team to force it. Now, as far as team fighting goes, he usually plays pretty safe, waiting for enemies to waste key abilities. Even if his team is fighting, if it's too risky for him to walk in range to damage, he'll sit back and be patient. Because of Akshan's E reset mechanic, along with his W passive that revives dead allies, he gets insane value by playing fights out this way, as he can just clean up after and revive his whole team. A common pattern was when he noticed a frontline champion was overextended, he'd purposely play aggressive to bait them to engage, leaving them overextended and isolated from their team. Then, after that takedown, he'll usually have the number advantage and can start moving in to clean up the rest of the enemy team. He also does a really good job anticipating pick opportunities. First, grouping with his team, but then spots Syndra possibly going for that big wave bot. bot, so he goes invisible. And by hovering in the choke point between the fight mid and the wave bot, he actually catches the enemy AD carry solo, similar to a play an assassin would make. Also, when his team is sieging, sometimes he'll anticipate a support needing to ward and hover on the side of his team, invisible. And with nothing but a Q into auto into ult, well, that's a dead Seraphine. Or by simply hanging out invisible in front of one of his teammates, he'll look for a squishy target to overextend so he can quickly burst them down. Okay, so now obviously huge shout out to Phantasm. I've linked his Twitch and YouTube in the description below. I highly recommend checking them out and make sure to send some love his way. Otherwise, you know the deal. If you want to learn how to carry bad teammates and finally rank up, then just take one of our 5 brand new courses that teach you the secrets to carrying as a top laner, jungler, mid laner, AD carry, and support. Pair that with our other new courses on how to counter OP top laners, OP mid laners, master your jungle clears, or check out our new Bronze to Diamond series. It doesn't stop there. We have new Season 14 courses on macro, wave control, trading, settings and hotkeys, CSing vision, mechanics, low elo mistakes, the list goes on. Then head on over to our Smurf commentaries. Select your champion to watch live commentaries from challenger experts teaching you how to carry out of the exact rank you're stuck in. You can try all of this out completely risk-free, since if you don't rank up while actively using skill capped, you'll get your money back, no questions asked. You can unlock all of this right now through the discount you can only get from the link below. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below to get the rank you've always wanted. Alright, and that will do it for this one. We here at Skill Capped want to thank you for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.